Hello and welcome, crack souls of the internet, to Real Reddit Horror, the series where I read horror stories from Redditors that they swear are true. And without further ado, let's dive right into the realm of horror. I survived a kidnapping, torture, and rape. I was taken deep into the wilderness and brutally attacked for many hours. I was beaten and repeatedly strangled and didn't expect to survive the night. It was pitch black and I had no idea where I was, but I could hear running water. And I spent a lot of time thinking about how he would surely throw my body in there when he was done with me, and probably no one would ever find it. But if they did, I would be naked, and that felt really embarrassing. Eventually, I reached a point where I hoped I would die the next time he strangled me because I couldn't take it anymore. Finally, he told me he was taking me back to his home, where he forced me into the shower. I still thought I was about to die, and that he was just cleaning me up to prepare for dumping my body somewhere. He left me alone in the bathroom for a minute, so I rubbed my blood into the ground in the corners of the shower, hoping that maybe, someday, someone would figure out that I'd been there and something really bad had happened to me. I couldn't believe it when he walked me out. He took my ID so he would know where to find me, and said he would kill me if I went to the cops or told anyone. Then he let me go. I went to the first place I saw with lights on, a hotel, and used their phone to call 911. I went to the hospital in an ambulance, went through a grape kit, and spoke with the police briefly. Then went into surgery to repair serious internal injuries I'd sustained. I spent 5 days in the hospital recovering from my injuries and surgery. He was arrested about a week later and was eventually sentenced to 30 years in prison. It's been 23 years and he's still locked up so far, though he became eligible for parole after the first 10 years. So I have to deal with his parole hearings every couple years. I don't always attend his parole hearings because I don't live in the same state where he's incarcerated, and I don't always feel up to being in the same room as him again. But I always send in a written victim impact statement for the parole board. I did attend his most recent parole hearing in 2015, and I thought it might be my final time, but I'm already feeling like I might need to face him again after all. I guess I'm searching for some sort of closure, even though I doubt I'll ever get it from him, because as far as I know, he's still only telling a variety of lies and blaming me for what he did. There are a lot of comments underneath this post. In some of them, Venter mentions that her father said she was asking for this tragedy to happen to her for letting a black man into her car. For the record, I don't believe Venter herself is racist, but apparently the perpetrator went out of his way to get her attention, and when she tried to distance herself, he accused her of being racist, guilt-tripping her into engaging with him. He convinced her to drive him to a park, and that's when everything went wrong. Her mother also forced herself into being involved in the legal cases against her wishes. So it goes without saying that she had some horrible parents. And this is one of the most tragic stories I've ever read on this channel. One January night, I decided to go out to my usual bar wearing this really nice watch my grandpa just gave me a couple weeks earlier for Christmas. Dumb move. I ran into my good friend Jay, who's a regular there. We had a great time hanging out, drinking, and shooting the shit. After the club closed, Jay suggested we go to an after-hours Latin spot about 20 minutes away. We got in his truck and we went. I Ubered, so my car was back at home anyway. When we got there, I was pretty drunk, but trying to sober up. So I was ordering water after water. Never been thirstier in my life. At some point, I blacked out. The next thing I remember, I woke up in a ditch. I was disoriented, but still had my Rolex on my wrist. Jay was trying to pull me out of the ditch to get me back in his truck. I must have passed out again, because the next time I opened my eyes, I was no longer in that ditch. I was in a stranger's car. That's when I realized my Rolex was gone. But that was the least of my concerns. Confused, just trying to make sense of what was happening, I started asking the guy who was driving questions. He began making sexually charged comments, implying that I was going to be raped or made to do something, or worse. In that moment, fear and instinct took over. As soon as the car slowed near a food mart, I threw that door open and ran barefoot into the freezing cold toward the store. My heart was pounding. My body was shaking from both the cold and the terror. I sprinted until I reached a gas station, desperate for safety. Inside, I begged the cashier to let me borrow a phone charger, but he refused. Fortunately, one of the customers in line brought one that they had at the corner for me. When my phone was finally charged, which thank God I still had it, I called my dad for some reason. Shock, I guess. His first words were very reasonable. He told me to call 911. When the county sheriff eventually arrived, I thought I would finally feel safe, but instead, the sheriff seemed dismissive, almost indifferent. Despite my appearance, disheveled, barefoot, and clearly traumatized, I felt like he didn't take me seriously at all. Later, I found out his report left out crucial details, making it seem like nothing much could be done about what had happened to me. Even the serial number of the Rolex, who cares now I'm alive, wasn't recorded, which I gave. Any pawn shop could have brought it and sold it easily. But I'm glad to be alive and have both kidneys. Later that morning, I returned to the club to see if the neighboring businesses had camera footage. But upon arriving there, in the parking lot was a guy, all bruised up and scratched up, with blood all over his face, lying against a car. I asked him if he's okay and what happened. He said, "A bunch of guys jumped me and jacked me for my car keys, but my car isn't even here." "Whose car is that?" "I don't know, but it's been here since last night." I offered to call an ambulance, but he ended up calling his brother to come get him. A couple days later, I called Jay to try to figure out what led up to all of that. He pretty much just said a lot of bad shit was going on and I went missing, and when he found me in the ditch and tried to help me get into his truck, I fought him. I'm pretty sure I was drugged. That experience is burned into my memory. Waking up in that car, hearing those words, and realizing what could have happened, I'll never forget that. Damn, that whole situation sounds sketchy. You seem to have your priorities in order, though. You are grateful to be alive and relatively unharmed. This whole situation will continue to gnaw at you at odd moments for the rest of your life, unfortunately. Though if you are resilient, it will cross your mind with decreasing frequency as time passes. It could have been so much worse. Human trafficked, a serial killer's pincushion, any number of horrific fates could have befell you if you had not had the wherewithal and the gumption to flee as soon as possible. Focus on that aspect of it if you begin to feel overwhelmed by the scope of your naivety or any other self-castigating behaviors. Your prompt action was your salvation, and a lot of folks in the same situation would have been petrified in horror at whatever chemicals some sinister bastard slipped you. You are not a victim because of your resolve and courage. Your innocence has essentially been lost due to the unspeakable ill intentions of others, perhaps. But I very much doubt you will allow yourself to become that vulnerable ever again. So take it as the close call it was and be more vigilant moving forward. One last thing. Your good friend Jay may have had a hand in the whole unsettling affair. I would re-examine your relationship with him and anyone else who was present and supposedly is a friend of yours. There's no way I would abandon my ridiculously intoxicated friend in the middle of nowhere to the tender mercies of a stranger. Almost kidnapped at night delivery. So this happened almost a year ago, and I'm not sure I've fully processed what happened. I got my own place at 22 and started a second job in the summer to help with cost. It was a newspaper route that ran 12 to 3 a.m. every day, and it was pretty simple and easy. 3 months into the job, and I was in a strict routine. I got my pickup location, I bagged newspapers. I listened to music and drove around dropping off newspapers at condos, apartments, and out my car window to houses. The same route every day. On this night, I couldn't sleep, and since I had more freedom to move my shift hours, I decided to head into work 15 minutes early. I'm not going to go into much detail of the location, but it was a public library, and I got there at 2 a.m. instead of 2:15 a.m. Pulling into the library is a huge parking lot and garage. Most of the lights were at the library entrance. Usually there is a security guard car that patrolled, and once he knew I was the newspaper girl, we would just wave at each other. That is important. I was pulling into the front of the library, and I have to do a half U-turn to park, but I noticed down the street there is another car doing a half U-turn as well. If you ever drive a lot at night, you know that headlights are a lot more noticeable, especially when nobody is on the road. That was my first gut instinct, and I tried to brush it off. So I watched in my side view mirror for them to pull off, but instead they stop and turn their lights off. It becomes a 30-second waiting game while I felt too uncomfortable to just get out and drop off the paper. Like a guardian angel, the security car turns the corner facing both our cars. I take this as my opportunity to safely get out the car and drop off the papers. But it was more like throwing them with how fast my heart was racing. As the paper hits the floor and I turn around, I see the security guard's car go into the parking garage. I hear tires screeching like it's taking off, and everything in my body tells me to run, so I sprint off to the curb, into my car, and lock the door. When I got to my car, I looked into the rearview mirror for the lights of the other car, and I don't see them. So I look into my side mirror, and I still don't see them. Then I look again into my rearview mirror and notice it's blacker than normal, so I straighten my posture to get a better look. The car was there, but it was so close behind me that I couldn't even see the headlights, or the color of anything, just the blackened windshield. I immediately step on it, flying past 2 stop signs and going into a gated community, which was my next delivery location to process what had just happened. I ended up quitting less than a week afterwards because I couldn't relax on the route anymore, but I always wonder if I just overreacted or if someone was actually planning on trying something. I forgot to mention that the route paid by the paper, and if I missed a delivery, I didn't get paid. The next night when I got to my work, my manager let me know that the library reported they never got the papers that night. You did not overreact. Every single detail of that sounds deliberate, like turning the lights off and waiting, timing the approach with the security guard leaving, pulling up close enough that you couldn't see their headlights. That's not a coincidence. That's someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The fact that you left 15 minutes early probably saved you. If you'd arrived at your normal time, the security guard would have already been in the garage. And quitting was the right call in my opinion. No newspaper route is worth that. Trust your gut always. Good thing it was working perfectly that night. Yeah, besides being more aware when I'm out alone, I always mix up my daily routines now. Hell no, you weren't overreacting. Whoever was in that car was deliberately trying to sneak up on you because they didn't think you could see them. The smartest thing you did was paying attention to your surroundings and listening to your intuition warning you to get the hell out of there with the quickness. You really saved your own self from something bad happening that night. So go on ahead and congratulate yourself. It sounds like whomever that was knew your routine and the guard's routine and planned to catch you off guard, which is even creepier. You did the right thing quitting, for real. If you have any stories you would like for me to read, or if you have your own, feel free to add them to the comment section. Thank you for watching. I've been Crackso Spinner, and until the next story, I'm just in my room.